could begin. I see a couple of more people just joining. Our friends from Source, New Mexico, Austin, great to see you. We have folks from NMDOH. Beautiful community partners, community members. So yes, we welcome you to introduce yourselves via the chat. So great to see you all. Austin, Justin, Pam, Alicia, Holly. We see you, Holly. All right, well, let's begin, team. I'll start with land acknowledgement. The New Mexico Alliance of Health Councils humbly recognizes and acknowledges we are on unceded territory and ancestral lands of the original peoples of New Mexico's Pueblos, Apache nations, and the Navajo Nation. Together, we acknowledge the history of genocide, dispossession, colonization, and ongoing systemic inequities while strengthening and respecting relationships with Indigenous peoples. We give thanks to the past, present, and future stewards of this land and respect all tribal nations' sovereignty. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous resiliency, self-determination, and self-governance of New Mexico's tribes and nations who are still here today. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. So here's our agenda for this next hour. We're going to provide a funding bill update and go into the highlights from our advocacy efforts and go into our 2025 advocacy strategy. But before we begin, I want to just welcome everyone and thank you all for being here with us today as we embark our 2024 advocacy season in support of New Mexico's county and tribal health councils. It's an honor truly to be here with all of you as we kick off this transformative campaign aimed at leveraging health councils for success in service of communities across our state. So today we embark on the beginning of something that I feel is truly, truly special, our collective effort to center and amplify community voices, advance health equity, and create positive and meaningful change across our communities. So as we gather here today, I'd like to invite all of us to draw strength from our unified vision and commitment to creating a healthier New Mexico. Together, we have the power to challenge the status quo, break down barriers, and champion rights and well-being for every single individual in our state. Through our collective advocacy efforts, we will also be shining a spotlight on the issues that matter and are most pressing in our communities, ignite conversations that inspire action, and mobilize others to partner with us for collective change. And so I want to just remind us that advocacy is not just about raising awareness, it's about igniting hope, sparking action, and building a healthier, brighter future for generations to come. So with each step we take together, with each voice we raise, we move closer to making health equity a reality for everyone here in New Mexico. And I think I feel that that's a collective commitment here, regardless of the pathway you're in or the focus area that you lead. But health equity is at the heart of the work that we do. So I invite you to let us seize this moment and embrace this opportunity, linking arms together as we march forward into the 2025 New Mexico legislative session with much courage, determination, and unwavering resolve. So thank you all for your dedication, your passion, and your leadership. Thank you. So let's move on to the next slide. And I'll pass it over to Geraldine.
All right, thank you. And so this slide really is just a brief overview of county and tribal health councils in case you're new here today. But I'm also assuming that if you're here today, you probably already know about health councils. But we have 33 county and 9 tribal health councils, a total of 42 health councils in New Mexico. And so just a highlight of this slide deck here is that there's under state statute, House Bill 137, County and Tribal Health Councils Act. And so there are functions under this bill that health councils carry out. And so a lot of that's being specific to community health assessments, community health planning, prioritization, doing convenings, resource sharing. And so there are so many functions that health councils play in the state. I thought it was important for us to kind of just give a quick overview if you are new here, but happy to debrief with anyone who is new and wants to learn more, can set up a one-on-one with you to just kind of give you a rundown of health councils or connect you to your own local health council as well. And so as you all know, we just had this legislative session, and this slide may look pretty familiar to a lot of our health councils on the call. But what we have been focusing on and trying to bring awareness around is the funding for health councils, and you'll see this timeline here actually dates back to pre-2010 to what we're currently at now is in 2024. And you do see the defunding here in 2010, and since the 2010, we've been trying to advocate for funding for health councils, specifically through state legislature funds. And you'll see here by the minimum level of funding for successful collaboration to function and operate. The funding here is over 100,000. And so health councils used to be funded at that at one point. And we would love to get our health councils back to that type of level of funding. And so what we've been doing is, focusing on increasing funding for health councils. One big thing that was will be happening this year is health councils had received a CDC/Kellogg grant fund, and that ends this year, May 31st, 2024. And so that gave health councils for the past 3 years an additional $50,000. And so that will stop, and health councils will just revert back to the state traditional funds. And so that's why this legislative session that we just had was so pivotal, because there's this funding cliff that will happen for majority of our health councils across the state. But just the main highlight for this slide here was why we were focused on so much advocacy this year, ensuring that our health councils had optimal and adequate funding to be able to operate and function in their own local communities. And so currently where we're at now is on March 6th, the governor signed and so the good thing is it passed both houses and was signed by the governor on March 6th. So we currently have $3 million in HB2, $3 million for health council funding. And so what used to be, I believe, $600,000 allocated last fiscal year is now $3 million, which is a huge, huge, huge win. And so I'm always excited to just kind of announce that. And you did see the timeline. It's been 13 years of underfunding. So such a huge win this year. And Val, I'd like to pass it to you or at Susan at this time to talk about the CDC Kellogg.
Yeah, thank you, Geraldine. And I'll pass it over here to Susan in a second. But in thinking about what Geraldine just shared with us, the cliff after 2010 and the funding pattern and what CDC Kellogg funding made possible for health councils and many other, efforts around the state and the country facing the pandemic. But want to be realistic, right? Here's what's possible with the $3 million moving forward, given that it's essentially replacement funding that replaces the CDC funding at $3 million. So I wanted just to make that point of clarification. So what is possible with the $3 million? And Susan, it would be great if you can give us a brief little overview of the current contract of health councils, if that's a possibility at this time.
Sure. So all health councils have some contracts from Department of Health, either directly or indirectly. One is known as the traditional contract, and that is where each health council is contracted for $15,333. So that is one. But I want to talk about the other contract that most, but not all. I think there were 3 or 4 health councils that decided to opt out of what we call the DOH CDC health disparities contract. And so that has been for $50,000 a year for the past 3 years. And that contract, that funding opportunity actually goes away in May of 2024. And the way we designed that contract, the first year, if you remember, the first year, and those contracts, by the way, the funding goes to Department of Health, and then they allocate funds to Center for Health Innovation to manage the Health Council contracts. So your contracts are actually coming via Center for Health Innovation, but it's for $50,000 a year for the past 3 years. Year 1, we focused on COVID recovery, if you remember. So you gathered data around COVID and vaccinations and other activities, and you did action plans and carried out those action plans and did a tremendous job. In year 2, we moved into that community rebuilding phase. And this is where we introduced a new cycle of the community health assessments and community health improvement plans. And so in year 2 of the grant, you really worked around gathering your communities, getting their input, looking at the data, and creating a draft community health improvement plan. And in year 3, the focus for those that were able to do a plan was to implement the plan. But in year 3, we realized that some health councils really were going through a lot of transitions, and they weren't ready to really implement or even carry out a plan. And so in year 3, we ended up with a 2-tier scope of work where you were either contracted to refine your community health improvement plan and carry it out, begin that implementation, or you chose a scope of work where you really wanted to focus on what we call the capacity building health councils, where you were focused on really strengthening your health council so you can sustain over time no matter what. And if you felt you had the capacity during year 3 to begin the CHIP cycle, you could, but it was an option, not required. So those are the 2 tiers that we have currently in this current fiscal year, which ends in May.
Thank you, Susan, for that recap. So just that point of clarification, right? What is possible with that $3 million replacement funding? It's definitely something to think about. And also just highlighting the fact that NMDOH will be the lead in the procurement process of the state funds of those $3 million with and for health councils. So more information, will be shared with all of us in the coming weeks and months. So we'll keep everyone informed. Next slide, please. Okay, and a lot of you have probably seen this before, but just to highlight the important partnership that we have, NMAHC, the New Mexico Alliance of Health Councils, in collaboration with NMDOH, New Mexico Department of Health. Both of us deeply committed in the work we're doing together in support of county and tribal health councils who are serving communities across the state. So this provides sort of an overview of our respective roles in relation to health councils. And on the NMHC side, as we move into this new year, of course, and conducting our own sustainability plan to make sure that our function and support in relation to health councils continues to be ongoing. And so next slide, please. Okay, the highlights for 2024 in terms of what worked in our advocacy efforts. And this would be great, and we'll send a survey post this presentation, because we would love to hear directly from each and every one of you what you saw to be beneficial, helpful with regards to our advocacy efforts, what worked well, what didn't, why, recommendations that you may have, ideas, strategies of improvement. We'll also be providing legislative feedback, what we learned from legislators this session. And also we'll talk a little bit about that Health Council survey next, please. Okay, we want to begin by giving our deepest gratitude to our legislative champions of HB 67, the funding for county and tribal health councils at 6.6, and as Geraldine noted earlier, $3 million, first time in well over a decade. So this is a big win for county and tribal health councils, of course, recognizing Representative Anthony Allison for his unwavering leadership and support of health councils over the last 3 or 4 years, championing a funding bill alongside with our co-sponsors, Representative Elizabeth Thompson, Representative Wanda Johnson, Senator Elizabeth Stefanik. And as a result of our collective advocacy efforts, fam, we were able to enlist additional co-sponsor legislative support with Representative Gail Armstrong, who has been a strong proponent of health councils for years, of course, Representative Tara Lujan, Representative Derek Lente, and Representative Jack Chatfield, who I would like to highlight, allocated a portion of his GROW funds towards health councils in his district, which includes Colfax, Curry, Harding, Quay, San Miguel, and Union. So congratulations to those health councils, of course, and deepest gratitude to Representative Chatfield for allocating that funding, and more information will come on that. And I also want to acknowledge the years of dedication, leadership, contributions from Representative Anthony Allison to New Mexico, his district, and at large. He has informed us that he is retiring. So we look forward to celebrating you, Representative Anthony Allison, in the weeks to come, and acknowledge you for your dedication and contributions to New Mexico. So this right here really depicts the impact of our collective advocacy efforts. And so we will continue to enlist that level of legislative support and hopefully have double of co-sponsors for this next upcoming session. Next, please. Okay, this probably looks familiar from our statewide meeting for our health councils, for county and tribal health councils, sorry. We weren't able to go into detail on these highlights because we had to run over to the state capitol. But I just wanted to give some overview, some context as to some of the success indicators. What made this $3 million state allocation possible this last legislative session? And of course, enlisting legislative support is at the heart of what we do. Engaging, educating legislators on the critical role, instrumental role of county and tribal health councils at the local community level, but also within the public health infrastructure, right? They are a critical partner. We enlisted significant support from House Appropriations and Finance, who worked very closely with our key partner, NMDOH, on that state funding allocation of $3 million. So thank you all around. Of course, members from Senate Finance, we had significant support there, and we will continue to strengthen that support for next year. And through the session, we had support from House Government, Elections, and Indian Affairs for due pass of the funding bill. So that also played a critical role in that state funding allocation. We cannot forget our tribal government support. This has been an ongoing relationship building. I'll turn to Geraldine here in a minute, but receiving governmental support from tribal leadership at the All Pueblo Council of Governors through a resolution, and Navajo Nations through a resolution as well. And the interim session was also critical in receiving endorsements from Legislative Health and Human Services, as well as Indian Affairs Committee. Of course, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of opening the meeting, we couldn't do this alone. We are stronger together, my friends, community members, key partners, our media partners, our county and tribal health councils, legislative partners. And there's some indicators here around what really supported the advocacy efforts this year through community support letters, over 600 signatures statewide, our nonprofit sector, for-profit sector, as I mentioned, public health sector partners, and so forth. We also were able to really center the community voices from health councils and amplify health council voices through our co-hosting of a radio show, To Your Health, on KTRC 103.7. Thank you, Hutton Broadcasting, for giving us the opportunity. So that's an open invitation to all of you who want to speak to health initiatives, integrative approaches to health, and also continue to center the voices of our health councils, and of course, our media partners. Our media partners really put health councils on the map this last year. So thank you to all of our media partners, both across radio, press, and TV. We had 10 seconds of fame on TV. I can't remember the channel right now, but it was in November. Of course, Source New Mexico, Santa Fe New Mexican, Albuquerque Journal, and the list goes on. We have over 35 impressions of media impressions last year. So we continue to work with our media partners to make sure our community voices and county and tribal health councils voices continue to be centered, and that we follow on what's next, right, with the upcoming session. What is the investment opportunity here for the governor and for legislation when it comes to this critical function of public health councils? Geraldine, anything here that you'd like to add or miss that I missed?
No, but we did get something in the chat. Don't forget the governor.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. That has been an
Great.
ongoing engagement point. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And to your question, Val, no, in regards to tribal government, APCG and Navajo Nation, a huge thank you to them. But also we had tribal health councils, representatives who were sent from their tribal governments, who are part of this tribal health council network, the 9, who showed up in person to speak in favor of health council funding. So I think that also spoke volumes in the room, in front of legislators, is to have tribal leadership, representatives come and speak about the impacts and the need for funding. And so I think too, also that impression in person was also, we are forever grateful for those who showed up in person, and also for our county health councils too as well. So in addition to that, I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Geraldine. And one piece here too is the New Mexico Counties Association. We've presented to them the last few years, and would look forward to enlisting their support as well. We can move on to this is a very, very brief, sort of visual of our advocacy strategy. We call it systems advocacy because we're talking about a statewide system of public health, county and tribal health councils. And it's super simple. Our advocacy strategy is really focused around this value proposition, right? Health councils are mandated by state statute to fulfill specific role, function, and collaborations. And so the value proposition here in thinking about health councils, and happy to hear some feedback from county and tribal health councils in reflecting on this statement: advancing health equity by investing in our local health councils, our meaning New Mexico's county and tribal health councils. The strategy has been super simple, and we will continue on this engagement, education, and enlisting the support, and moreover, cultivating partnerships with our governor, our legislative body, and other key partners in the public health sector. And the messaging, right? Making sure that the messaging centers community voices and the voices of county and tribal health councils, that the message is compelling, clear, and consistent, right? And we couldn't have done what we were able to accomplish this year if it wasn't for our advocacy partners, which are highlighted here in this little ecosystem. But of course, the list is so long and very robust. And again, we couldn't have done it without you, with each and every one of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for joining our advocacy efforts. Next, please. And I'll pass it over to you, Geraldine.
All right. And so very quickly, any questions before we move on? I'm going to give a brief highlight of our previous legislative session. But any questions in chat, or anyone want to raise their hand? All right, no questions. So we'll go ahead and proceed. Okay, so, oh, hey, Debbie, I see your hand.
Hi there, everyone. I'm sorry I got on a little bit late, but before Geraldine continues, I just wanted to let everybody know I was there during the session, day in and day out. We have so much to be thankful for in all of our partners, but especially in Valeria and Geraldine. They were there every day without even hesitating, if it was snowing, if it was windy, if it was raining. And in the office that I worked in, I got several comments just saying how Valeria and Geraldine were so good about coming to the legislators and just being very precise and clear about what the funding was needed for, what it was going to be used for, and how it was very important that we receive this funding. And so I just can't thank them enough for our health council and for the citizens and residents of our communities in Torrance County and our surrounding areas that we serve. This extra money that they were able to secure so that we can continue the work that we're doing just means so much to our community and communities. So I don't even know how to thank them. Can we give you a raise, or can we do something to thank you? Because their efforts were tireless. They were there every day, every day, every day. And not just frustrated and, you know, when a door would slam in their face, or they just kept on with a smile on their face and with determination. And not many people can say that they know, at least for my part, being there at the legislature, that they were so good. And I just appreciate them so much. And I hope everybody realizes how much time and effort they put into to securing this funding for all of us. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Debbie. Forever grateful for your words, and also forever grateful to be able to represent health councils in those spaces. Yeah, it was truly, it was an experience for sure that's been very different from the past 4 years that I've been here. And so I would like to just say, like, this collective effort from the Alliance staff, but also health councils. I think that the more we were engaged this year and we had a collective effort, you know, from the systems advocacy that we just mentioned here before earlier, but I think all of that and the moving parts and representation there every day was definitely, I think, is what kind of pushed legislators to think about health councils and for them not to forget, and to also bring awareness to some of those who had a lot of questions, as well as what are health councils. But it's really funny because we had a lot of those who were in support and some of them who would just kind of turn a blind eye, and we see them walking down the hall and they put their head down. So to us, that meant we were doing what we needed to do there at the Roundhouse and at the state capitol and getting people's attention. But thank you so much for your words, Debbie. And a little fun fact here, just to throw something out. Debbie and her office, they have amazing food. They have amazing a Frito pie. Like they have something going on every day. So if you guys are at the Capitol and you guys want to swing by Debbie's office, they are so generous. But I'll continue here. As part of our funding avenues this past year, number one was enlisting state agency, the budget proposal with Secretary Patrick Allen through DOH to include funding for health councils. And so what was included in the budget was the original 600,000, which was going to remain the same. But with, with the efforts around legislation and talking with our representatives, we were able to, with the support of our representatives, to enlist DOH to increase that 600,000 to 3 million. And so that was part of the process. Number two, obviously, was our funding bill, House Bill 67. And then, as mentioned before, the systems advocacy approach with our partners, tribal leadership, our board, our health councils, and some of the other partners that we supported during the session, the Alcohol Harms Alleviation Coalition, the AHA, New Mexico Voices, New Mexico Thrive, and more. In addition to that, thinking about other options with this funding cliff was how we were going to get replacement funds for health councils. So exploring funding opportunities through different state agencies, the Attorney General's office through the opioid settlement funds, HST, which is now will become the Health Authority, New Mexico Ag, Indian Affairs, UNM, and other corporate sponsorships. So these are just some of our different avenues that we took, thinking about this funding cliff if things didn't go as planned. And so the next 3 slides is really just kind of what was part of our strategies. Number one being the website. Obviously, that's some place we'll always keep updated in the next coming session, our 1-pager and 7-pager. And so right now we still have those up on our website, really highlighting testimonials, data points, and metrics from health councils, specifically around the CDC funding and what was made possible. But we'll keep those up, in the meantime, but we'll definitely update those for the next upcoming session. And so those are both linked on our advocacy page. And so this was just our bill process for House Bill 67. A lot of emphasis and focus on our interim sessions. We were endorsed by the Interim Legislative Health and Human Services Committee, the Interim Indian Affairs Committee. And so having the time to present, meet with our legislators, and provide as much information up front as we could. Also doing one-on-one meetings during an interim session, virtually and in person, with our various representatives and senators from April to December. And enlisting county and tribal leadership, this looked a little bit different for us this year, was engaging the New Mexico County Association, all Pueblo Council of Governors and the Navajo Nation Council delegates. And, going into the session was definitely pre-filing our bill and confirming our sponsors, which we outlined very early on in this presentation. During a legislative session, continuing to enlist through virtual and in-person meetings, but also having the opportunity to present at the House government elections in Indian Affairs. So those who do pass, as Val had noted. And because of the short session this year, it was a 30-day session. Our top priority was to ensure that our Health Council funding was in HB2, which it was. And a big part of our advocacy efforts was to ensure we had plenty of awareness and CTAs sent out. And so that's where the influx of information came through for our health councils through newsletters, announcements, and Mighty Networks, and even seeing Val live at the state capitol, recording an update. So all the good stuff here, sending out those announcements to health councils. We gathered over 600 signatures for letters of support online, and also threw a big shout out to some of our health councils who collected signatures in person at your community events. We also worked on a 3-minute video testimonial. And so thank you to our health councils and board members who are also part of that, and a big shout out to our legislators too as well. I believe Senator Stefanix was on that PSA with us, so you can always find that on our advocacy website. In addition to that, Val also talked about press and the radio. The radio is an ongoing effort, so please let us know if that's something you're interested in doing. Love to highlight the work that you're doing in your community. And it's kind of a very high level overview of everything that we had done this past legislative session. A lot of it may look very similar this upcoming session, but I'm going to go ahead and pass to Val for our feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you, Geraldine. And again, thank you to everybody, and reflecting on Debbie's feedback and acknowledgement. Thank you, Debbie. You were there with us all along as well. I'm humbled by the work of county and tribal health councils, and that is truly what ignites my resolve every single day, taking a stand on behalf of our communities and health councils at the state capitol, in working with, enlisting the executive branch, the governor, our legislators. So thank you, and for all you do. And just to highlight some of the feedback we received from legislators this session. They're very interested to see what kind of sort of standardized professional, standards or accountability standards health councils have as part of their function as, individual health councils or as a collective system, function of public health. They were very impressed by the CHIP priorities, both on a regional and aggregate, and also some of the key performance indicators, the metrics that we were able to really highlight during this last session. They want to know more of your data points and metrics around direct impact services, or how you're bridging the gap in services in your community. So metrics, data collection is going to be a continued effort here in collaboration with health councils, both on the qualitative and quantitative side, of course, working closely with NMDOH on that front. There were definitely legislative inquiries around how health councils are collaborating, essentially de-siloing, right? Both at the community level and at the systems level. The team and health councils quickly mobilized this last session, and we put together a 15-page overview report for legislators so that they can see how instrumental health councils are within the system, but what types of collaborations they're either leading or partnering in at the local and public health sector system as well. County commission partnerships, they want to know how our health councils are collaborating or partnering with their counties or city municipalities. State agencies, of course, we have strong partnerships there. Any other systems collaborations that you may be part of, they want to know more about. So this is just some of the highlights from their feedback. Already working on all of this for this upcoming session. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But of course, as always, we value your feedback, and so we'd like to hear from you. What worked well this year? Geraldine went over in detail some of the advocacy strategies and efforts. I know that email during the session got very, very overwhelming, but of course there were so many timely updates that we needed to share with all of you. So it would be good to hear from you directly as to where we can improve, what worked well, how can we, sort of dial in our communications with our health councils and of course our partners as well, leading up to this next legislative session and during the session. So your recommendations are incredibly important to the success of this upcoming advocacy season. And if you have any ideas in mind right now, feel free to share with us via the chat as well. We'd love to capture
Margaret has
that.
her hand up.
Thank you, Rebecca. Go ahead, Margaret.
Hi, are you guys able to hear me?
Okay. So one thing that I was thinking of doing this year is possibly having, because anytime you advocate or we want somebody to advocate, we want representative, we want elected officials to advocate for a health council, it starts at home. You know, we got to do it within our county. So what I was thinking of doing this year as we get closer to legislation again is maybe have a luncheon for elected officials or a dinner. And I know we're able to go to their home, which is like board of commissioners meeting or the city council meeting, but let's invite them to us. Let's invite them to us and have like a lunch for them, invite our legislation representative, and just kind of have a sit down of everything we do. Anytime that I go to the city council or a board of commissioners, I don't go alone because of course the health council is not me alone. You know, it's many members sit on that. So I will take DWI program director. I will take our substance prevention network. I will take amplified therapy. That's very much part of our health council. And we talk about how we collaborate. So put on some type of presentation, starting at home and what we do and how we advocate for our community members and how we grow stronger.
Margaret, what you just shared is music to my ears because if we go to the next slide, we're going to be talking about our 2024 advocacy strategy, which is focused on what you just highlighted. Convening with our legislators, senators, and representatives, and of course, the governor is our very special guest. So I'm going to touch on that. So I'm glad you're on board already. We were great minds think alike, I guess, but we're on the same page, my friend. And I want to take a moment first and foremost to thank our partner, Ancorum Foundation, as they have been able to provide an investment so that we can excel our advocacy efforts this year leading up to 2024. So if we move to the next slide, thank you, Ancorum. We want to talk about, oh, can we hit next, please? Thank you. We want to talk about the 2025 New Mexico Legislative Session Advocacy Timeline. So to your point, Margaret, what we have identified as a critical strategy for this year is to host four regional legislative and health council summit. Obviously, thank you to our partner and Quorum for making this a possibility. So we're going to have later on in the presentation a submission form for all of county and tribal health councils to identify their availability for the first 2 weeks in May. We're going to have to mobilize very quickly. Why May? We want to have these convenings with our legislators before the interim session starts. And so this is not just an advocacy strategy. This is part of our commitment to cultivate strong partnerships with our legislators. To your point, Margaret, right? Connect with them, invite them to your health council meetings, convene with them one-on-one to share about the great work you're doing and the impact that you're making in your communities and the collaborations that you're involved in or leading. So before I get into the weeds, this is Geraldine's absolute most favorite slide ever. And it gives a quick overview of what is our advocacy session looking like this year, season looking like this year. So of course, engaging and enlisting legislative support through our awareness campaigning and one-on-one, as Margaret noted, is an ongoing effort, year-round effort, my friends, and it takes all of us. And this first quarter, we are in this sort of pre-planning phase of these four summits, these four regional summits, and also going to be working closely with NMDOH as we plan for the next session and allocating state funding for health councils for the next session. The legislative summits, we're looking to host them, as I mentioned, the first 2 weeks in May. Then the third and fourth quarter really is going to be a main focus on interim session. And once again, working towards getting those endorsements from various committees. And then the fourth quarter, of course, is getting geared up and ready for the 2025 legislative session. And more information to come around our co-hosting of Public Health Day during the next session, and of course our statewide meeting for health councils, and NMHC being available to our co-sponsors for future funding bill during their pre-filing process. You know, we provide them with information that they might need. So next slide, please. So that's a quick little snapshot of what this year is going to look like. Very high level, but we're about to get into the weeds. Go ahead, Geraldine, and we'll do our best to do this within 10 minutes.
I
Go
know.
ahead, my friend. Go ahead.
Quick time check. I will just try and hit the important points, but I think Val hit on this very early as our value proposition, essentially our messaging for the legislative session coming up. Investing in New Mexico's county and tribal health councils. And so that being, you know, statewide health councils are the trusted local community health hubs, and they have been since the very early 1990s. And so looking at this messaging here is what are health council strengths, uniqueness, and the impacts, and what's possible with optimal funding being that not what you're currently operating with, but what is the ideal amount that you should be functioning with this level of funding. You know, what does that amount look like for your health council, and not only for your health council, but for your community, and to carry out the functions in service of community members across the state. Number two being that we are going to continue to enlist our partners for advocacy. We touched on our systems, our advocacy systems approach, and so that including continuing to engage, educate, and enlist our legislators, focus on our current partnerships and new partnerships as well. And tribal leadership also being very important to continue to keep them in the loop and keeping them informed of things as they develop. And last being our county commissioners, thinking about those within county jurisdictions as well. And I do see Chris's hand.
Hi all, this is incredibly wonderful and very interesting in terms of the strategy and everything. The only thing I was thinking as I was watching, and I think Val that you covered that in a PowerPoint a little back on that, but I was just wondering, I come more from a marketing position, but a lot of that in terms of the skills you need to do that is very similar to the advocacy. But the one thing I keep in mind all the time is that, you know, when you're out advocating or quote unquote marketing, in this case, you've got to have a product in a way. And I think part of this is, you know, in going and doing all this work in advocacy, the one thing we do need to keep in mind is with this budget increase is how do the health councils really do show the kinds of achievements and everything they can do? Because I think you've sort of mentioned it now that we have this amount of money allocated, and we've said we can do so much more with it in that way. How do we keep track of that? How do we put that, you know, into the body in terms of what we're sort of letting legislators know that we can do with it? And one thing I was thinking, it is one thing around the metrics, I think, to go back to the different health councils, community health improvement plans, because there are metrics in there. A lot of those are pretty long term. In other words, to hit some of those, it's going to take a long time. And I'm wondering, I think you just mentioned, you know, the potential to work more with NMDOH on a lot of this and around those accountability standards and everything. And I think, you know, if the Alliance can work a lot more closely with the Department of Health promotion teams who are skilled trainers and know a lot of that, I think that would be really great in being able to show how those capacities and other pieces are going, plus the collaboration. And you may have this in here. But I was also thinking one thing is perhaps the Department of Health could give you even some key things out of the accreditation standards that, especially around the whole community engagement piece, that we could show a lot more how the health councils are, sort of either bringing in more people or more diversity, but somehow really getting their communities engaged, which right now I'm hearing, I've heard from Otero and several others. I know that Torrance is doing it as well. I think the health councils are beginning to really build on that and to be doing a much more effective job of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Great feedback. Happy to circle back with you. Just being mindful of the time too. But on all your points that you've made, there's already been ongoing collaboration with NMAHC, health promotion managers, NMDOH on the data collection, evaluation, metrics, and so on and so forth. So a lot of what you noted, we're already on the same page and advancing some of the work forward. Happy to circle back with you individually, but back to our advocacy strategy coming into the year, these 4 regional legislative summits. If we can go to the next page, let's go 2 over, sorry, just because of the time. So in thinking about what is optimal, oh, here we go. This is good. So in thinking about even some of the points that Chris just noted, this Regional Legislative Health Council Summit is one of the many ways in which we'll continue to engage and enlist support from governor, legislative body. The summit itself, this is a framework of what that quote unquote presentation could be looking like. Of course, we do need to collaborate with health council so that we can really frame this in a way that is most relevant to them. But really given the lay of the land, the fact that health councils, we're not talking about an initiative, we're not talking about a project, we're talking about state statute, we're talking about health councils fulfilling a specific role and function stipulated by law, right? And the fact that health councils are the trusted community health hubs across New Mexico. The framework around what are the priorities health councils are driving towards, what are those metrics, the impact, short-term, long-term, is really going to be framed around this CHIPS framework in relation to the statewide health improvement plan. So that really gives the picture of where health councils are within the context of public health, obviously in deep partnership with NMDOH, health promotion managers, and how health councils are in other intersectional areas. Because if we want a robust workforce, if we want higher rates of high school graduation, if we want a healthier population, if we want all these things that we say we want, economic prosperity, all of that, we need a healthy population, right? And so health is at the intersection of everything, and health councils are a critical driver of improving population health. And then do a little comparative analysis for legislators. Like, here's what's possible with $3 million. Here's where the gap is. And here's what optimal funding can make possible, not just obviously to leverage health councils for success, but to leverage health councils in a way that they can function at a level that their communities that there's truly needed, right? And really render results and improvements in ways that we're not capable, the health councils are not capable of doing right now, because they've been functioning on a shoestring budget, right? So that's a comparative analysis that we're going to do. And then an up-to-date metrics. Legislators want to know, where are health councils driving impact? Give me some data, and it'll be peppered, data points with qualitative sharing. We want community members at that table sharing too with legislators. Here's how health councils impacted my life. Here's how health councils helped me connect with XYZ, really contextualizing in a humanistic way the impact of health councils. And then go into this whole optimal funding, right? Because right now we might be able to afford 2 part-time staff or 1 full-time, and maybe host these many educational events, and maybe have this much money for printing or this much money for educational supplies. But what could be possible if we had optimal funding, where you could cover the capacity, the staffing that you truly need at your health council, all of the overhead expenses, your office, the expenses related to educational prevention, intervention programming, You know, and the list goes on, and we're going to share a survey, very brief, very to the point, health councils survey that's going to help us understand what would an optimal funding request enable your health council to do what and to achieve what, right? And then really paint the picture of health councils, obviously as a critical collaborators at the community level, right? What kind of collaborations are you participating in or leading locally and within the system of public health sector, as we mentioned? Where are you working with others to bridge gaps in services for your local community members? And I know health councils have a long list of ways in which they are doing all of this and so much more. So we're going to work together with our health councils to start formulating that agenda. And of course, this is not the entire list, my friends, but here's sort of a little snapshot of each of the regional summits and the respective representatives and senators, obviously, will all be invited. The governor will be invited, our health promotion managers and folks, executive team from NMDOH and other state agencies would be invited. We want our health councils to highlight, you know, and invite their community members and their key partners to the table. So next, please, I think, and one more. Yes, being that it's 1 o'clock, thank you all for staying here with us. And if you can stay a couple of more minutes, but to that point, we didn't quite go into what is optimal funding, right? What is that optimal operating budget? What does it include? All of that will be included in this survey. And I just want to acknowledge the resilience of our health councils over the last 13 years, especially since 2010, and the dedication that you have for our communities across the state. I know that we wouldn't be here today without that deep level of dedication and resilience. And I know we've been able to make the impossible possible with the very little funding that some of you have had to function under. And I want to invite all of us to start leaning into what's possible with optimal funding, right? What is possible for our communities with optimal funding? What is possible for your health council if you had optimal funding to really leverage you for success in service of your communities? So I want to pause there, and we'll do a little separate recording to go over our value proposition and what is optimal funding, so that you can have that to review at a time where we're not rushed with time. Over to you, Geraldine.
Val, we have a few questions in the chat. Is it okay if we?
I'm happy to stay beyond the hour if others are too.
Okay, so I had a question from Mary. I think this is an important one to address. She said, I heard that Peak Compost was suggesting a regional structure instead of county-based. And I know Rebecca answered some of that in chat, but just for those, do you want to give some reference to what that was and how it doesn't impact health councils now, but talking about that bit?
Yeah, long story short, my friends, we learned about this bill, you know, one evening, and we were at Senator Pete Campos' office the very next day. Long story short, the intention behind issuing that bill to, you know, sort of dismantle county and tribal health councils into these regional health councils was really a message. He wanted to send a message to health councils to work more collaboratively, not just locally, but across systems, to which we responded with a very robust overview of all the ways in which health councils are collaborating at the local and systems level. And that's a report that we're happy to share with all of you and include on the NMAHC website, accessible to anyone who wants to look at it. And this is another component of really also not just telling the story in our advocacy efforts and awareness campaigns of health councils being strong collaborators, but really from a systems perspective, right? Where health councils are leading key collaborations, essential, critical, timely, long-term, where they're participating. And as you'll see in the overview that we'll share with you, that it's very robust. Senator Pete Campos was very impressed by that. He and I are to circle back here now that there's been a little sort of decompression from the very, very busy 30-day session. But he's a partner. He's a strong partner and proponent of health councils, now understanding a bit further and deeply your role in terms of collaboration. Does that help and satisfy your question? And this is part of that engaging, educating, and enlisting, because the more that we can really convey what health council's role and function is, and all the ways that they are collaborating to your respective representatives and senators in your district, and for them to hear it directly from the health councils, the better, my friends. It takes one phone call, one email, maybe several emails to connect with them, but they're readily available and happy to hear directly from you.
And Val, we also got a question from Enrique. Optimal funding for Bernalillo County or as a small nonprofit doing public health work?
I would say optimal funding that will leverage your health council to really serve communities based on the community needs in a way that perhaps not able to at this time. That's going to look very different from health council to health council.
And I believe those are all the questions in chat right now. Unless anyone has any other questions and would like to raise their hand.
And also feedback, what you found very helpful during this last advocacy season. Any new ideas for this upcoming advocacy season too? Happy to hear from you.
If we're hearing none, I think also, if you can please take the time to fill out the form. We do have a deadline of March 20th, next Wednesday. The only reason for that is because we are mobilizing very quickly to start planning our summits. There are questions on there about the regional summits, if health councils out there are willing to partner with the Alliance. Your availability for early May, and additional questions breaking down what optimal funding will look like. And then it ends with a question on how you are able to be involved in the next upcoming session. Again, a collective effort. So it's a very brief, straight to the point survey. And I think just very quickly, gonna run through some pictures here. But these are some of the pictures we didn't get to share at our statewide meeting. I know it doesn't truly encompass all the work that's been done, but it was so great to meet with our legislators, enlisting Dr. Charles Sally from the Legislative Finance. He's the director there at LF, and also Indian Affairs, presenting down in El Paso at the El Pueblo Council of Governors, Legislative Health and Human Services Committee. There's Debbie, 100% board members. We did tabling at Indian Day, also NM and Ag Day. There's Val at the basketball game. And yeah, all of our other partners and health councils who came to show up in numbers. Here's Val and I showing up when there was a snowstorm in Santa Fe. And all of our wonderful tribal partners down here at the bottom right side. And staff, there's Representative Lujan, Allison. And so many pictures. Here's us with Secretary Allen. And yeah, we would love to also post some of these on our website, just so you all get a chance to look at them a little bit longer. And also, finally, Allison, we love him. He's such a sweetheart, and all the work that he's done to advocate for health councils, such a champion, and he will be missed. And so we've got great recommendations on sponsors for this upcoming session. So we cannot wait to connect with him during our Northwest Summit meeting. So we hope we can invite him and get him to come, and we get to recognize him and acknowledge him there. But yes, I believe that concludes, right, Val? Do we have anything in addition to that to share?
No, that was great. Thank you, Geraldine. So many stories that we can share with all of you about this last legislative session. But couldn't be more grateful to all of our advocacy partners, our health councils, of course, the governor for approving the budget, and our HB 67 legislative champions, and really the legislative process. It's been a very encouraging session, and we will continue to build upon that. So thank you all for all the ways that you showed up for health councils in your communities this year. And we look forward to our continued effort together. We're stronger together. Thank you.